This episode of Passing the Plate is sponsored by Storied Book Recipes from Storied.com. Welcome to Passing the Plate, the podcast that's all about food, traditions, and the wonderful connections they create. I'm Lisa Lisson, the genealogist and family history expert behind Are You My Cousin?
And I'm Ashley Covelli, the food writer and recipe developer behind Big Flavors from a Tiny Kitchen. We'll be your guides on this flavor-packed adventure. We're not just talking about recipes. We're diving into family history, exploring new cultures, and preserving favorite recipes for future generations. In short, we're celebrating the stories and tastes that come with every bite.
So grab a seat at the table and let's embark on a journey of flavor, tradition, and connection. This is Passing the Plate, where every episode is a feast for the senses and a celebration of the ties that nourish our souls.
August is coming to a close, and it's certainly hot outside. In this episode, we'll be talking about icy treats to cool you off on the hottest of days.
Okay, my favorite cold treat was really the classic popsicle. Now, I don't know about you, but my favorite one was a vanilla one that had the chocolate shell on it. So basically it was vanilla ice cream. You know, they dipped it in like I don't know what you call it, chocolate, and it hardens. And it's like a little
the shell
on the shell on it. And so Mom never really said, but I think one of the reasons she would hand us the popsicles is because, well, they had a handle on them and you could take them outside pretty easily, you know, as a kid. So, but we also have this thing called, I don't know if you've had this, called the push-ups. Mm-hmm. And so it's orange sherbet and it's in a tube. Okay, guys, it looks like a empty toilet paper tube. It's basically a cardboard tube. And then you would eat it and then you would push it up. You know, you eat it down, then you push up to the next little bit, and you push it up a little bit more. And I think they still have them around these days, but those were like the most popular. And again, I don't know this for sure, but I think the moms liked them because, one, they had a handle. Number two, they weren't quite as messy as an ice cream cone because it was kind of self-contained, and then you just pushed it up. So I'm thinking some mom had to create that. I don't know, but I'm going with that.
I feel like when I was a kid, there was a Flintstones branded one they were called Push Pops or something, but similar. But I just remember if you took too long with it, it would get kind of gross down by the end, like by the little cardboard tube, and so it'd be a little weird. But my favorite frozen treats on a stick were the Jell-O pudding pops, because it would either be chocolate, vanilla, or a swirl, and they were all so good. And then those little Disney popsicles that were shaped like the characters. I don't know if you remember those. It was like different fruit flavors, but it'd be like shaped like Mickey or Donald or Goofy or Minnie.
I don't think I ever had those. I had a Mickey Mouse popsicle in Disney World, but not I don't know that I ever saw them in the grocery store to buy.
I wonder if they still make those. I'll have to keep an eye out for it. But drumsticks I loved, which not on a stick, but still, you know, handheld portable. And then the dibs were like little kind of like nugget versions of a drumstick. So it was like vanilla ice cream coated in that little chocolate shell with peanuts on it.
I remember the drumsticks. I never cared for those that much, but I don't remember the coneless ones. The dibs. Well,
they're not like related. That's just what they remind me of. I think it's a Nestle. I think it's Nestle.
Oh, okay.
But interestingly, so do you remember in all of your, I don't know how often you ate drumsticks since you didn't really care for them, but we used to get the variety pack. So there'd be like chocolate, vanilla, or there was a vanilla one that had like a caramel like center that went down, like kind of liquid caramel. I had one actually very recently because there's a 7-Eleven near my house and we sometimes get treats from there. I was telling my husband, I said, this one is like the cone is soggy. And he said, that's how drumsticks always are. And I said, no, they're not. And he swears that they're always soggy. And I swear that they're definitely usually have like a little bit of a crispiness to the cone. Do you remember?
So what I remember about them, because I probably only ever ate one or two, but my brother would eat them. I think that the cone was supposed to probably be crispy, but it was oftentimes by the time you got to the cone, it was no longer crispy. It was all kind of a melty mess.
All right. I guess I'll have to have some more for science till I find a crispy one and have him take a look at it.
When we're done recording, you have to go get one and try it out and let me know how it goes.
Mission accepted.
All right. The things we do, right?
I know.
All right. So now there are lots of different types of frozen desserts. I think we often as kids remember the ones with the sticks.
Yeah.
But the names of the different ones can be really confusing, I think. So let's talk about some of the differences for the different types of frozen desserts.
All right. So we'll start off kind of classic with things like ice cream, frozen custard, gelato, soft serve. I went on the Consumer Reports website, and they have an article that's really good. We'll link it in the show notes that tells the differences between all of these. And basically, for ice cream, according to the FDA's standards of identity for ice cream, it's produced by freezing while stirring a pasteurized mix that has to consist of one or more of a slew of, quote, optional dairy ingredients. So that includes all types of different milk, condensed, concentrated, evaporated, sweetened, skim, buttermilk, as well as cream and something called plastic cream, which is not plastic and sometimes is known as concentrated milk fat. So in order for the product to be labeled as ice cream, it also has to contain no less than 10% milk fat and must weigh no less than 4.5 pounds to the gallon. That's what's known as overrun, and that's basically the amount of air that's whipped into the product. And so having a standard basically makes it so that manufacturers cannot sell you air by just putting more air, whipping it into the mix. They can't call it ice cream. So unless it's frozen custard, ice cream should contain less than 1.4% egg yolk solids by weight of the food, not including the weight of any bulky flavoring ingredients. So there's the difference there. Frozen custard, which is my favorite, love. As somebody who lived in Wisconsin for over a decade, frozen custard has a very special place in my heart. So the difference with the custard and the ice cream is that the custard needs to contain 1.4% egg yolk solids by the weight of the finished food, whereas the ice cream is less egg yolks. So it's got a richer flavor most often. And then when it comes to gelato, it's related to ice cream, but it's an Italian version that's usually creamier, a little more spreadable because it has less air whipped into it. It also contains less butter fat than ice cream does. It's about 4 to 9%. And it's served at a higher temperature, which I thought was interesting. Maybe that keeps it from getting quite as hard. I'm not sure. Because when you think of gelato, it's usually pretty fluffy, right?
Yeah, definitely creamier than the others. I'm sitting here trying to think about, I hadn't thought about it being served a little bit warmer. Interesting.
But not melty.
Oh, pardon?
But not melty.
But not melty. We don't want melty.
Although one of the funniest things, when my son was little, I took him to the yard house, and it was right around or on his birthday, and he got a cup of ice cream with a candle in it, and it came out and it was like half melted. And I was thinking, oh man, this poor kid, like he's got melted ice cream, and he lit up and he's like, oh, I got ice cream and soup. So it's like, talk about seeing the glass half full as like a 4-year-old or whatever he was at the time.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That is funny. I wonder if it has to do anything with like the serving gelato at that higher temperature has to do with because it's less butter fat.
Yeah, maybe. So according to that Consumer Reports article, it says, in general, you can rest easy knowing that you're eating ice cream or frozen custard if those words are on the label. So if you spot a product that reads frozen dairy dessert, it might contain milk and all the other ingredients of ice cream, but it's probably filled with more air or otherwise falls short of those FDA requirements. So they can't use those words, ice cream or frozen custard, if it doesn't match up with that.
The moral of the story is read the label.
Yeah, yes. It can get tedious, but yes, there's a lot of creative words that get used. And then the other thing that kind of falls in this category is soft serve, which I remember my husband telling me a story about how it was invented, and it was one of those, okay, Dino's telling a story, I'm going to have to fact check him because I want to make sure this is true. But it's a variety of ice cream similar to regular conventional ice cream, but it's softer and less dense because there's more air introduced during freezing. So it's not typically sold prepackaged in supermarkets here in the US, but it's, at fairs and carnivals, amusement parks, a lot of restaurants. So when freezing things for ice cream, all ice cream must be frozen quickly so that the crystal growth doesn't happen within it, and it gets that nice texture. With soft serve, it's accomplished by a special machine that holds premixed product at a very low but not frozen temperature at wherever it's being sold. So the way that it was invented, and he was right, I will say, was over Memorial Day weekend in 1934, Tom Carvel, the founder of the Carvel brand franchise, which is, I don't know how many states it's in, but it's big here in New York. He had a flat tire on his ice cream truck in Hartsdale, New York, pulled into a parking lot and started selling his melting ice cream to vacationers who were driving by. Within 2 days, he sold his entire supply of ice cream and concluded that both a fixed location and soft serve, as opposed to the hard frozen ice cream, were both potentially good business ideas. So in 1936, he opened his first store on the original broken down truck site and developed a secret soft serve ice cream formula, as well as patented super low temperature ice cream machines. And now that is out here a huge chain, like I don't know, Dairy Queen, or what are other ice cream chains? Do you have ice cream
Dairy
chains
Queen's
there?
the big one that I think of. Yeah.
Yeah. I know
I've seen Carvel in like the grocery stores, but we don't actually have those stores here.
That's like the first time that I ever, when my husband asked if I wanted to go to Ben & Jerry's, I was like, I'm sorry, what? Because I only knew Ben & Jerry's as pints in the grocery store. And he was like, oh, no, there's a store that's just Ben & Jerry's, and it blew my mind, and it was amazing.
Yeah. No, we do have that down here.
Yeah.
Well, there are more types of frozen desserts that are out there. There's always the sherbet, sorbets, and frozen yogurts that you can throw into the group as well. Now, where I found an interesting article on these was actually in the magazine Real Simple, so we'll link that down in the show notes as well. But I know I grew up enjoying sherbet. I liked sherbet a lot. You could get all the different colors. That was a big deal, was to get to choose the color of sherbet that week. But sherbet actually has its origins all the way back to Turkey during the age of the Ottoman Empire.
Oh.
And so originally it was a Middle Eastern sweet and fruity kind of iced drink that over the decades and over the generations, eventually all the way into the 20th century, they started mixing it with milk or cream and served it more as a frozen dessert. So that's kind of the origins of today's frozen sherbet, is that sweet fruity drink that was had milk or cream added to it. So today it's made with pureed fruit and or fruit juice and milk or cream and milk fat. The milk fat content is usually only about 1 to 2%. So it's typically a little bit lower in milk fat than just a traditional ice cream is.
That explains how the texture is different than like something normally fruity, because it definitely is a little bit creamy, but not overly so.
Exactly. It's not overly creamy. I don't want to say it's grainy, but it's kind of edging toward that, at least for me. That's my palate. I don't mean to generalize about that, but I do find it a little bit like that.
When I was a kid, because my grandparents would have that in the freezer, I would find this, I don't mean for this to sound gross, but a lot of times it would have like little patches that had like kind of a little bit of a slimy something in it. And it wasn't just like one, so it was a weird batch. I don't know what it was, if it's like something like not mixed in properly, or I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I almost think it's probably because it was around the edges usually, and I almost think there was probably a little bit of melting, refreezing going on that may have caused that. Is my theory, guys. Okay. I don't know that for sure, but that's my theory. We need to interview a food scientist just one day on this to get some of these burning questions answered.
Any food scientists out there, let us know. Yeah,
but besides the sherbet, there's a sorbet. Now, I really didn't know about the sorbet until I was probably in my college years, but it is a French treat that contains fruit and sugar, and it is a really good option for vegans, apparently, because it doesn't contain milk. So it's made from fruit juices or purees, ice, a sweetener. It can be turned in an ice cream maker, actually, but you'll see it sometimes. You'll see it like on the fancy tasting shows or fancy restaurants where they'll use it as a palate cleanser.
Yeah, a lot of times like a citrus flavor, right?
Yeah. Now you might know this But did you know that sorbetto is the Italian version of a sorbet?
Okay.
So I can't believe I
Just
stumped you on
sounds
that one.
Well, no, I've heard
You've
that
heard
word.
that, okay.
I'm not big into. I love fruit. I don't particularly like those ones. Aren't really my go-to frozen dessert, I guess. So
Not my go-to either,
yeah,
typically, because I don't typically add a lot of sugar to the fruits that I eat. But
same.
but I've certainly had them and find
Yeah.
them absolutely delicious, quite frankly.
This episode of Passing the Plate is sponsored by Storied Book Recipes from Storied.
With every recipe, shared meal, and story told at the table, we're building a living history.
And that's what Storied is all about. It's a place to discover, preserve, and share your family's story online for future generations.
Storied allows you to build a detailed family tree, uncover historical records, and even explore newspaper archives to bring your ancestors' stories to life.
I love that it's not just names and dates. It's about capturing the heart of who your family is. Things like where they came from, what was important to them, how they lived, and even the things that they cooked in their daily lives.
Whether you're just starting out or deep into genealogy research, Storied makes it easy and meaningful to connect the dots and keep your legacy alive.
So while you're passing the plate, don't forget to pass on the stories too. Visit storied.com/plate or use code PLATE to save 20% and begin your journey today.
Now, I do like this next one, which is frozen yogurt.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it's made pretty much the same way that ice cream is made. It is a frozen dairy dessert. They use yogurt as opposed to milk or cream, obviously. And it usually does contain less than 10% milk fat. So it does. Sometimes people say, oh, yeah, it has health benefits because you're eating yogurt. Okay, it's frozen yogurt. I'd be hard pressed to support that. But part of it is I was reading that the article mentioned that it does contain some of the probiotic benefits potentially, and that's where people will kind of latch onto that. But at the end of the day, guys, it is a frozen dairy dessert with yogurt.
Especially
so
if you,
definitely has a lot of sugar in it.
Especially if you go to one of those places, I don't know if they're still around as much as they were a few years ago, but that you get a cup and the cups are all giant. There's giant size, slightly more giant, and even more giant, and you fill it up with as many frozen yogurts and toppings as you want, and then they sell it by weight. And you're always like, I'm just going to go easy this time. And it always ended up costing like $15. It was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Because
there was no going easy.
You can't. It's just not possible. Moving on to a few frozen items that might have a little less popularity. So a granita is, according to Wikipedia, it's also called granita siciliana, but I have never heard that term, and there's a pretty large Italian population out here, but who knows. But that's a frozen that's a semi-frozen dessert made with sugar, water, and various flavorings that origins come from Sicily. It's said that in Italy, depending on where you are, it's kind of in various forms. So it's related to like sorbet and Italian ice, but throughout all of Sicily, the consistency varies. So food writer Jeffrey Steingarten said that the desired texture seems to vary from city to city on the island. On the West Coast and in Palermo, it's at its chunkiest, and then in the East, it's nearly as smooth as sorbet. So he attributes that to different freezing techniques. So the smoother ones are produced in a gelato machine, where the more coarse or chunky, as he had said, varieties are frozen with just a little bit of agitation and then scraped or shaved to produce separated crystals. So although the texture varies from coarse to smooth, it's always different than ice cream, which is creamier, and that of sorbet, which is more compact. So it makes it a little more distinct and unique. And I've actually made granita before. It's been years, but you can put whatever, a lot of times it has like a fruit mixture, in a loaf pan in the freezer, and then you set a timer, and every so often you scrape at it with a fork. So as the ice crystals are forming, you kind of like agitate it and scrape more of it up. It makes it like kind of fluffy. And then one that I think when we were talking about this, I think I had said this word and Lisa was like, say what now? Is the semifreddo. Am I remembering that right? Is this the one that you hadn't heard of?
Remembering that right. I was like, huh?
Okay. So this semifreddo means half cold or half frozen. And it's a class of frozen desserts, again, similar to ice cream. Main ingredients are egg yolks, sugar, and cream. But it has the texture of a frozen mousse or cake. So semifreddo was created during the 19th century, but didn't really get popular until the early 20th century. And there's a recipe from Tyler Florence. I found it online. I've made it from one of his cookbooks years ago. It's a spiced honey semifreddo with dried fruit and almonds. The version that I made was called almond semifreddo, but the only difference when I compared the two recipes seems to be that the one on the Food Network website that I'll link to has an amaretto cookie garnish. But you make this again, it's like in a loaf pan, and the texture is just so beautiful, and it's got this spiced syrup that you kind of drizzle over at the end, and then apparently some crushed amaretto cookies. But it is really delightful and elegant, and you can make it ahead of time for a party. So I definitely encourage you to try it if you haven't.
It sounds delicious.
It's really it takes some time to prepare though, because you need to set in the freezer. But yeah, it's very, very good.
Works for me. Now I will say that one of my favorites for the summer at the cold treats is actually a milkshake.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't have these very often, but I think I've mentioned in a previous episode that I used to work in an ice cream shop. That was my summer job. And the most popular item on the entire menu were the milkshakes. And so, if we were working, we could eat ice cream. So as long as we were working and on shift, we could eat whatever we wanted. And okay, all I can say is peppermint ice cream with hot fudge on top. And
Yum.
That was one of my favorites. And then the chocolate, just this pure chocolate milkshake was my other favorite treat that I would have. And I can't believe I wasn't, I can't, when I think back about all this stuff, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I ate that much ice cream, but I did. Anyway.
Those teenage metabolisms,
Right.
Because I had similar working at a donut shop. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but a milkshake. So, I mean, I think that's kind of a classic that I honestly don't know how many people drink these as much, but like it's just you're blending your milk, your ice cream, and any flavoring. Perhaps if you want to add flavorings to it, you can. So it's just a mixture of that. Now, a pure milkshake is not going to add ice to it. Okay, there's not going to add ice into it. That's something different. But oftentimes, so you get the milk, the ice cream of choice. I always liked mine really thick. I didn't like mine too runny, but they can be thinner if you want. And then you would just, top it with whipped cream or, whatever you want to. It could be an extra, candy on top of it. A cherry is kind of classic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was something in researching for the episode I hadn't heard of, was called a thick shake, which uses extra ice cream. I think, and when I think about it, that's actually what we made. I'm sure we,
yeah.
If our milkshakes, the big thing was you could turn it upside down and it didn't fall out.
Oh, right.
And so not as thick as what a concrete, I think that I hear one of the stores does these days.
Queen,
but yeah, you had to start with, basically we'd start eating it with a spoon and then get around to the straw part once it thinned down a little bit. But yeah.
I have two quick milkshake thoughts. One is if you want something that's not full of ice cream, so maybe it's technically not a milkshake, but frozen bananas give you great ice cream texture without actual ice cream. And I have a milkshake recipe that uses those. That's awesome. But two, we were at a diner in Connecticut last week, and they had a whole specialty milkshake menu with photos, and my son was very excited. He got a Trix milkshake. Okay, so Lisa's face was very funny just now. She's like, I don't know about that. It was delicious because they gave him the whole thing in that like soda fountain glass with the whipped cream and the pieces of Trix cereal on top. They were blended throughout. And like any solid, it was kind of like a 50s style diner. They gave him the cup that they blended in, the steel cup, on the side with the extra in it. So me and my husband shared that, and then he got the whole milkshake. It was great. It was really good. Yeah. So cereal can be in milkshake too.
Yep. I'm probably still going to stick to my classic, but that's all right. Yeah. But no, I'm good with that. But now frappes, that was sounded Southern, didn't it? My Southern accent just really came through on that one.
Well, I do declare.
A frappe. Now I can't say it at all. You say it, Ashley.
I think that's how you say it, a frappe.
Yeah, frappe. Yeah. So this is, with all the fancy coffee drinks that are out there, this is actually a coffee based blended drink. And so I don't know that it's not really a true milkshake, but it is considered a coffee based drink. And it really just means, the term means cold, frothy beverage, which is pretty much what it is these days. Now, the modern frappe has its roots in Greece, where it was first created in the 1950s by accident. Aren't all the best recipes by accident?
Right?
So a Nestle employee was apparently trying to make instant coffee and ended up blending coffee, sugar, and ice together, creating what's now they call it the now famous Greek frappe. So
interesting.
The interesting thing is, and when you think, that's exactly what a frappe is. It's coffee, sugar, and ice. And then the common ingredients, if you're having one today, the more modern one, is that liquid base. So you can have coffee, milk, juice, whatever. And you want ice because you want to get that kind of slushy texture. So think slushy when we were kids. And then any sweeteners or sugars, flavorings that would want to be added would be what would be one today. I do think the one I hear most often is the coffee one. Yeah. Though I do see others that are not coffee based, definitely. And believe it or not, as much as I love coffee, it's actually not my favorite thing. I'm kind of just now coming into the whole cold coffee type of flavorings. Oh, right.
But wait, what about coffee ice cream? Do you like?
I really don't care for coffee flavored things like ice cream, coffee flavored candies. A mocha brownie, yeah, I can go with that, but you have chocolate, so that helps. But typically, just a straight coffee thing is not my favorite thing.
So there's a coffee roaster in a couple, the next town up from me that is around the corner from an ice cream shop, and they use the coffee from the coffee roaster in their either coffee ice cream, or they make like an espresso chip that's like, espresso with chocolate chips. Very good. I think that one might change your mind on.
Now, I'm willing to come and try it again. I've actually met that coffee roaster.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's the other location. It's in Croton, okay. And that's where they do their roasting. And then around the corner, so it's called the Black Cow, and then around the corner is the Blue Pig, so it's animals and colors. But and they have a very awesome rotating ice cream menu, but there's almost always a coffee or espresso one on the menu.
Okay, so we really need to just have our own food tour for like 2 weeks and just go from place to all the places we've mentioned that we want to go to.
We got to mix some savory in there, but yes.
I know. But then we can always round it off with a smoothie, too.
Yes.
Guys, which is basically just a thick blended drink of fruits, vegetables, yogurt, milk, pretty much whatever you want to put in one these days. There are whole books out there on smoothies.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people, you can make a vegetable-based smoothie so that you have, full of vitamins and fiber and protein. And so I think typically in a smoothie, depending on the type, the generalization is it has less sugar content than, say, like a frappe or a milkshake. But again, it all depends on what you put in it. They're usually going to be fruit based or they're going to be vegetable based. I personally love a good green smoothie, but mainly just the ones I make. So
yeah. And if I make a smoothie at home, it's definitely going to have a different flavor profile than if my son is going to make one at home. However, I will say, even with like a fruity one, you can get some greens in there without making it taste like a green smoothie. So yeah.
Yeah, because you can use sweeteners too, like bananas or a little bit of honey or a date works really well in there too. So definitely on that. So
and I also like using if it needs a little liquid, sometimes I like using coconut water.
Oh,
because it's nice to get some electrolytes in there too.
I have not tried that. Well, guys, that wraps it up on frozen treats for this summer. As try to stay cool out there for these last days of summer. Feel free to find the show notes for this episode at passingtheplate.org/67.
That's a wrap on this episode of Passing the Plate. We hope you enjoyed our journey into the world of food, traditions, and the amazing connections they create.
It's been a pleasure sharing these stories and flavors with you. Remember, food is more than just sustenance. It's a way to connect with our past, present, and future.
So keep sharing your meals, keep passing those plates, and keep creating memories that will last a lifetime. Head to passingtheplate.org/podcast for show notes.